Hello and welcome to the Joy of Graphing. Today we're going to be graphing a beautiful scene of a field with a red barn and a flower, two birds up in the sky and the sun shining. It's a wonderful spring day. The equations that we're going to use are going to flash across the bottom of your screen now. Of course, feel free to use your own mathematical creativity. Let's get started. At the center, at the origin, we're going to have a wonderful, beautiful flower. This is just a rough sketch. It'll be purple. You let it be whatever color you want it to be. Of course, this flower will have a stem that goes down to the grass, and the grass is going to come all the way across here. And all this will be shaded green. Now, that's not a very good texture for our grass, so we're going to need some actual grass sticking up. And there's one equation that will do all that grass right there. So there's our picture so far. We also need a red barn. Our barn can go on either side. I'm going to put it on the right side. It's going to be a little rectangle over here. It'll be colored in. We'll put a roof on it. That'll be shaded as well. Well, that's a wonderful spring day without the sun shining. Clearly we're going to use the equation for a circle on that one. And let's put a couple birds up in the sky. Some blackbirds over in the corner that we haven't used yet. They're going to kind of look like the letter M, and we will draw those as well. So let's go to desmos.com/calculator and let's get started. So let's graph the barn and the flower and the sun and the birds. Let's do it. Let's start with the flower. The flower is going to be at the origin, and it's going to follow this equation. It's going to be polar. R equals A cosine, parentheses, B theta, we'll spell it out, T-H-E-T-A, minus C plus D. I'm going to add a slider for all of them. I want to point out one thing. Notice that this that I have highlighted is often in parentheses. This time I'm going to leave it out of the parentheses. Alright, so here we go. We have a slider for all of them. So let's change A. It's going to be how far our flower comes out. I'm going to change it to about 1/2. How do you know? Well, you'll see in a minute. Let's change B. I'm going to let B, this is interesting, isn't it, when you twist this around. I'm going to let B be an integer. So if I click one of these, I can change it. Let's go from 1 to 10 with a step of 1, meaning that whenever I slide this, it changes it integer by integer. And C turns it, probably not something I'm going to be too concerned with right now. And D, well, explodes it or not. I'm going to leave D about right here. I'm going to change the color of my flower and start filling it in. I'm going to edit my list and turn it into a purple flower. And instead of equals, I'm going to let it be less than or equal to. And there we go. We have a flower. That's kind of large. I'm going to zoom it out. I'm going to put a lot of stuff around it. Okay. I'm going to go back up in here in my formula, and I'm going to type these numbers in. So 0.5. I'm doing this just so I can unclutter my work. That's 5. That is 1.7. And D is 0.8 really quickly while I'm thinking about it. And while I'm deleting A, B, C, and D, let me point out that the B value is the number of petals it has. Probably noticed that earlier, and I may have said that earlier. If I put 100 in there, then we have 100 petals. They all run all over each other, and you really can't see them. But if I have 4, then I have 4 petals. I want a 5-petal flower. Okay, let's get the stem of our flower, and the stem of our flower is going to be vertical, and it's going to be green. And it needs to go from about here to about here. And that's very, very narrow on either side of the x-axis. So I'm going to squeeze it from about negative 0.1 to about 0.1. So less than or equal to x, because we're shading in horizontally. Now, I know I'm doing this with my hands, but we're going to be shading it left to right, and then we'll chop it off vertically as well. Less than or equal to about 0.1. Okay, so there is our stem, wrong color, and it clearly goes too far. But that's okay. Let's put some brackets here and start chopping it off. Thinking ahead, I'm going to put the ground somewhere down about here. On my picture, I'm going to put it at negative 3.5. So let's go negative 3.5 less than or equal to y, because now I'm trying to pick which part of it I want vertically, less than or equal to, we might be tempted to put 0, but as we do, we see that the stem is in the middle of the flower and it's really coinciding with it. So instead of 0, let's lower it down a little bit. Let's let it be negative 0.2, no, 0.3, 0.4, 0.5, 0.5 is too low, 0.4 is good right there. Okay? Now let's change the color of it. We're going to edit this and let it be a green stem. There we go. Starting to take shape just a little bit. By the way, I know the grid is in the way. We're going to remove that at the very end when we're finished. So let's go ahead and put the ground down. So y is less than or equal to negative 3.5. Horizontal line. There we go. We have a red ground. You can change it to whatever color you want. Obviously green would be the clear choice if it's a spring day. So we are going to change this to green. Now why negative 3.5? Put it wherever you want it. But the flower has to be at the origin. Okay. Let's put the sun up in the sky. Well, the sun is a round ball, therefore we are going to have to draw a circle. So let's go ahead and put parentheses x minus h squared plus parentheses y minus k close parentheses squared equals r squared. Okay, we're going to plug in a slider for all of these, and we'll be able to move this wherever we want it to go. So let's move the sun. Let's slide it, let's put it about right here. Let's put it at 5, comma 10. And let's let the sun be about 1 point, let's let it be 2. Pretty good size sun. And let's start plugging these numbers in so they don't clutter our work. So h is 5. K is 10. I'll take that back. Let's raise this thing up just a little bit. Let's raise it up to about 12. We can zoom out if necessary. And the radius is 2, so we can just make that 2 squared. You can put a 4 there if you like. We have a sun that is blue and doesn't have an inside to it, so let's edit the list, turn it into a orange sun, and let's fill it in. So instead of equals, we're going to make it less than or equal to. There we go. We have the sun up in the sky. Okay, let's put a barn over here. Now, a barn is clearly rectangular, and most barns are red, so we're going to go from, well, wherever you want to go, but let's, I'm going to go from 12 to about 18. So it's the same idea as the stem. So here's the idea. We're going to have something shaded horizontally. So it's going to be an x value. So from 10 less than or equal to x less than or equal to, what did I say, 18? There's the width of our barn. Well, how high is it going to go and how low is it going to go? Well, it's going to go down to the ground. So I've put the squiggly bracket so we can restrict this. And from negative 3.5, now it sits on the ground, less than or equal to y, now we have a barn that goes up infinitely, less than or equal to, let's take our barn up to about here. About 4, I think, should be a good height for a barn. There we go. It's a very large flower in comparison to our barn. And you know what? I don't like that. Let's fix it. Therefore, let's raise the barn. We're going to raise the roof. Sorry, I had to do it. I'm going to take it up to 6, and I'm going to take the barn over to 21. There we go. That's a little more proportionate. And now let's just make this a red barn. There we go. All right. Well, we need a roof on our barn. It needs to be triangular. It needs to be a roof that is pitched like a normal barn roof. And that would be an absolute value equation. So y equals a, absolute values, the vertical bar, x minus h, go outside the bars, and then plus k. And we're going to plug in numbers for a, h, and k. Well, let's go ahead and think logically. I want to think about what's halfway in between 10 and 21. and that would actually be 15.5. We average 10 and 21, we add 10 plus 21, and we get 31, we cut 31.5, we get 15.5. So H is going to be 15.5. Our slider doesn't reach that far. Don't worry about it. Let's just go ahead and plug in 15.5. There we go. That's our roof. Clearly we have a problem. It's upside down. But that's okay. We'll fix it. I'm going to take the H slider out. And let's flip our roof upside down. And let's slide it up. Okay, not sliding up quite far enough. That's okay. We can make it go higher. So let's let it go from 1 to about 15. Just click off there somewhere, and then we'll start sliding that up. And we'll slide it up to about 11. I think that's good. Okay. Well, we have too much roof. We have way too much roof. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to go ahead and plug these numbers in. So negative 0.8 and then 11. Let's take these sliders out because they complicate our life. You can leave them in if you like. Let's drag this over here. What we're going to do is we're going to cut this right there. So we're going to have the top of the roof from the top of the rectangle and up. We're going to keep that. And the top of the rectangle is at 6. It goes to 6. And that's the top of it. So the upper portion, we're going to shade from here to here. So we're going to turn this into one big inequality. So we're going to shade everything from 6 less than or equal to y less than or equal to that absolute value equation. There we go. We have a barn with a roof. Alright, if you wanted to, you could raise the roof. Let's raise it just a little bit higher. Take it up to 15, see? See how that changes it? 12. I'm going to leave it at 12. I kind of like that. Leave it 12 here. Okay, the only thing left to do, well, the only things left to do is put some grass and put a bird or two in the air. So let's go ahead and put some grass in. And that grass is going to have to be individual blades of grass. But there's not a separate equation for each of those. Don't panic. We'll do this. Y equals tangent of x. Okay, we have purple grass. And clearly we have way too much of it, and it's wavy, and there's a problem. So what we're going to do is shift our grass down. So let's shift it down. Let's shift it down 4. And I say that. I don't want to shift it down 3.5. I want to shift it down 4. That way, whatever wave we have won't be too pronounced when we have more of them. We'll get there in a second. But basically, I've shifted it down 4. I don't think that's far enough. Let's take it down to 4.5. No, let's take it down to 5. Not 45, 5. There we go. I think that'll work. I think we can change it. So we have shifted the tangents down. This is the graph of tangent. And what we need is, well, we need to turn them green. We need more of them, and we need to chop them off. We need to mow our grass. We need to mow it, we need to restrict it at ground level up just a little bit higher than ground level. So let's start by getting more blades of grass. And we can tinker with different numbers in here. And I'm going to tinker with one that doesn't do it. Let's change this to be 10. What does that do? Well, it makes our grass a little more vertical, not completely vertical. You can leave it that way if you like. Actually, I think I'm going to, just so I don't have waviness in my grass. And now let's put a number in front of the x. And when I do that, that changes the period. So if I change this to a 10, then I have a lot more blades of grass. Oh, let's change it to a 15. Now I have even more blades of grass. Now, the more you do, the more cluttered it's going to get. So if I changed it to 25, it's going to be really hard to see the rest of the picture. So I'm going to go back to 15. And it is filtering out some of the picture, but that's okay. We're about to restrict it. Let's see. We only want to keep the parts that are between, I'm thinking vertically here, the y-axis. I want to keep the parts that are between negative 3.5, because that's where our ground is, less than or equal to y, less than or equal to, okay, how high do you want your grass to be? Let's take it up to negative 2.5, and when I do, then that's what I have. Okay, well, my grass is purple, and I think my grass is too high. So I'm going to mow my grass a little bit. We're going to take that down to negative 3, so it's only 1/2 high. And I am going to change the color of it, and I'm going to be honest, I don't like the fact that it's so sparse. I'm not very happy about the fact that it's so sparse. Let me take this 10 out in front and see what happens. It's not really going to change much at all. It does a little bit, but not that much. Still a little bit sparse. Let's take this up to a 20 and see what happens. Still have a problem. Let's leave it at 15 for now. We're going to switch colors on this. Change my grass to green. There we go. This is what we have so far. Oh, okay, yeah. When we change the resolution or zoom in and out, then we're able to see different aspects of it. So based on the way we're zooming, you can see where there are gaps in the grass, and it's a resolution issue. Okay, so let's open this back up. We're going to put a bird or two in the sky. And when I was in elementary school, and probably you as well, you learned to draw birds by just doing kind of a funny little M. So you know what? That looks kind of like a sine curve to me. So let's do this. So y equals sine x. There we go. We have a bird. Well, clearly it's not in the air. Well, it's sort of in the air. It's hovering a little bit. I don't get the physics of a hovering bird. But we're going to have to move it. We're going to have to clip its wings, because its wings go on forever, and we're going to have to shrink it down a little bit. We have quite a bit of work to do on this bird, and then we can create another one, slide it around as well. So let's raise the bird up. I think the bird should probably fly somewhere around 13, 14. So let's shift it up to 14. There we go. We have raised the bird up above the level of the sun. It kind of depends on your perspective of what you're looking at, right? And we need to shrink this whole thing down. So instead of this bird being this massive thing, let's shrink it down. And that's going to be an amplitude issue. So, well, partially an amplitude issue. Right now the amplitude is 1. Let's take it to about a half. And I'm just tinkering here. Okay, that might work. I'll put a fourth instead of a half. That's okay. We'll go with that. And so now we have this bird that's really far spread out. What we need to do is adjust its period. So instead of having a bird that's spread out like this, we're going to condense it down. So the bigger the number, the smaller the period. We just saw that with the graph. So right now the period is 2 pi, because it's 2 pi over, see where the cursor's flashing in front of that x? There's a 1 there. So it's 2 pi over 1. Now we have 2 pi over 4. And that actually looks a little bit more realistic, right? That looks a whole lot more realistic. Now, it's not a bird, it's a ribbon in the sky. So we're going to cut off a little bit on either side. And so let's see where the mouse is? The mouse is about at negative 13. So let's do this. Put the brackets. Negative 13 less than or equal to x, because we're going to be chopping things off horizontally. Less than or equal to, all right, how much of the bird do we want to chop off? Well, let's just get a little crazy and let's put 0. Okay, here's the bird. Clearly too much. Let's chop it off about right here. About right here is at negative 10. Okay, here's our bird. I don't think he's completely symmetric. You see how he has one wing that's a little bit longer than the other? So what we're going to do is take this back. We take it to negative 12. We don't have enough of a bird. Let's go negative 12.5. Not enough. Negative 12.7. Let's go a little bit more. Make this bird a little more symmetric. There we go. There's a bird. There he is. Isn't that neat? Okay, let's put another bird nearby. All we're going to do is copy this one and just shift a few things around. The amplitude is good. The period is good. We're just going to have to put him in a different place. Let's slide this bird down. So instead of flying up at 14, let's put him at, I don't know, 11. There we go. We've lowered the bird. And now we are going to shift him in a different direction. Now, there is a way to do a horizontal shift, but considering the fact that we have as much bird as we want, we're going to instead of changing the C value, which is right now 0 in our red sinusoidal equation. Instead of doing that, instead of changing the C value, we're going to just change some of these restrictions. Let's take him over to negative 15. Okay? And negative 12, and then we'll go from there. Alright, so clearly we don't have the right kind of bird, and something's a little bit wrong. Let's take him over to negative 16. At this point you can start experimenting. There we go. There's part of a bird. And let's chop bird off right about here. That's at about negative 13. A little too much. There we go. Actually, let's do 13.1 and negative 15.9. We have two birds that look pretty symmetric. Okay. There we go. We have changed the bird. It's now a black bird. We will take off the grid, the x-axis, the y-axis, and there we go. There's a beautiful field with a flower, a barn, the sun, and two birds. Enjoy your graphing.